I'm going to call to order meeting on the 24th, 7 o'clock. We have 5 members, so we have a quorum. We can move forward. No need to sit any alternates who aren't here anyway.
I'm an alternate.
Well, would you please be seated for Ferg?
Sure.
Please. And you're going to have to sit for Kevin? Great. First item on the agenda is this zoning application referral.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I find it necessary to recuse myself, so I'll be
Hiram,
in the
how does
hall.
that work now with not having a,
You're still okay, you've got 4.
okay?
Yeah, so you're still okay, you have a quorum.
Hiram, what's this referral all about?
Mr. Chairman, what you have this evening is a referral from the zoning commission under Connecticut General Statute 8-3A. I've given you a copy of 8-3A there, you can take a look at that, but I'll summarize it for you quickly. Is that it asks when towns have separate planning commissions and zoning commissions, the zoning commission refers requests for zone changes and text changes to the planning commission for a recommendation prior to their public hearing. The planning commission typically would comment on the requested changes with regard to the plan of conservation and development. And as some of you may know, you can make other comments as well if you like, but that's up to you, and it's covered under 8-3A. What I've given you is just a very brief sort of summary of what you're looking at here. The applicant is asking for essentially 2 things this evening. One is a text amendment regarding changes to Article 10, Section G1 and G2, and that was part of the information in your packet. That had to do with distance from a facility, service station facility, from a house of worship, church, synagogue, and so on. The second thing that is being asked of you this evening is to take a look at the change of zone with regard to the current zone, which is I-1, and the change of zone requested is a PAD, it's a mixed-use zone which is being requested on the current parcel. So there's no subdivision in this particular case, but what they're asking for are 2 things. One is a PAD, that's what they're asking the zoning commission to change the zone to from I-1. And then the second thing is the zone text change with regard to the distance from the Shabbat of the Valley that I mentioned to you before. The rest of the things that you have there in the brief staff report are just the mechanical items with regard to the sizes of the various uses that are proposed on the property. You all have copies of the site plans, I believe, are part of your package, so you can take a look at those. We made a quick reference to some of the sections of the plan of conservation development. There may be others, or you may decide that these are enough. It's up to you. The 2007 plan contains several sections which you could refer to. As I said, the current zoning is I-1. The proposal was to create a mixed-use village in this particular area. Could be considered in some of the policies that are covered on page 94 of the plan, if you like. There's some desirable performance objectives which are found on page 95 to 99 of the plan. And basically those talked about the southern gateway. Some of you may remember, I think Mark may have been, yeah. There was lots of discussion about the southern gateway when the plan was being put together in 2006, 2007. And those things that are in there with regard to desirable performance objectives in large part refer to the property on the opposite side of the street, primarily the Northeast Utilities property. They talk about views to the ridge, they talk about not obstructing the views, they talk about the context-sensitive nature of the architecture. That could also apply to this site as well. But by and large, if you read through those sections of the plan, you'll find that an awful lot of them pertain specifically to the 60 acres on the east side of Hop Meadow Street. There's some sections of the plan of conservation development which talk about economic development policies. There are about 9 of them. Some of them may apply. It's up to you whether you decide that they apply or not. There are also some housing suggestions with regard to the specific population, things that are needed in the town. The applicant hasn't stated the exact population that will be served by the housing that's proposed at this site, but there is a reference to a connection to a live-work concept that's proposed. And the alternates are shown on the plans, I think, as you have in your hand. One of the other documents that's obviously not the plan of conservation and development that's often referred to and has been referred to many times recently is the 2011 corridor study for Route 10. And there were lots of discussions about how much traffic Route 10 could bear and what the development along 10 the impact would have on it. It talked about the fact that there's a desire to maintain the two-lane nature of Route 10, and that essentially the turning lanes, if for safety purposes, when development occurred, would be proposed or could be proposed, depending upon what DOT says they want. But also, the underlying fact is that Route 10 would remain two-lane highway, not 4 lanes. And that's pretty clear in the Florida study. I think, and then finally, there's some reference to the bike trail that runs along behind this particular property, and whether that has any particular impact, either positive or negative, with regard to this site, is something you may want to talk about as well. So the way this works, and I want to be clear for the record that this meeting this evening is not the public hearing. The public hearing on the zone change and the site plan will take place at the Zoning Commission at their next meeting, probably on July 7th. That's where the schedule is for. And so that any public comments need to come in at that time. But if the commission has questions that I can answer tonight, I'm happy to do that. The applicant is here, but without getting into a big back and forth, we don't want to have a de facto public hearing. So I want to be careful about that. But if you have any questions about this application that you can either ask me, or if I can get a clarification from the applicant, I'm happy to do that too.
So in essence, you're asking not for public comment at this meeting?
Correct. Now, I would say this, though, for the record, too. I want to be very clear that we're welcoming public comments. We want to welcome public comments throughout any process that we go through. There are a couple of ways that people can do that, actually a number of ways. One is they can certainly call us and ask us questions, any of the staff have questions at any time. They can also send in letters that will be part of the public record. They can also attend the public hearing, the Zoning Commission public hearing, and make their feelings known to the Zoning Commission at that time. So at least 2 or 3 different ways why they can do that. This particular referral to the Planning Commission is from the Zoning Commission, and what they would like is your referral back to them at some point prior to their public hearing. Chris, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
Sure. If you're through.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay. Please identify yourself.
Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Chris Smith. I am a land use attorney and a partner at the law firm of Shipman and Goodwin out of our Hartford office, and I appear before you this evening on behalf of Tom Evans, who is the owner of the property. It's known as 155 Hot Meadow, and it's the property that is the subject of the proposed new PAD zone change for that property, which is one of the 2 items that has been referred to you by the Zoning Commission, as Mr. Peck has indicated. For the record, Mr. Evans is here, as well as Guy Hesketh, our engineer. If you have any questions concerning the proposal from an engineering standpoint, and I would like to note, as Mr. Peck indicated, this evening is really just a referral under a statute where it's 8-3A subsection B, that essentially, when you have the split commissions, as Mr. Peck indicated, the Zoning Commission has to refer a zone change and/or a zone text amendment. You have both of those before you this evening to the Planning Commission for your input and comments concerning whether the proposed zone change and zone text is consistent with your, in this case, 2007 POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development. And I would respectfully submit that it is. The site specifics concerning the actual proposed uses that comprise this mixed-use proposal will be taken up by the Zoning Commission and will be the subject of the public hearing that at the moment is scheduled for July 7th. So I'm not going to spend really any time dealing with that. I just have some general comments concerning the consistency with the POCD, which is really why we're here this evening, and I would like to discuss those. And just to kind of put things a little in perspective, the Zoning Commission, relative to the proposed zone change in zone text, their charge or the standard of review for the Zoning Commission is whether the proposal is consistent with the town's POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development, the comprehensive plan, which are the zoning regulations, and the zone map, and whether it will have an adverse effect on the public health safety. As you heard, there's really three components to that test, the first of which, by statute, has to come to you for referral and comment back to the Planning Commission, consistency with the POCD. Mr. Peck has provided you with his report that does address the POCD. What I would like to do is just respectfully refer to some specific sections in the POCD. And at the outset, I would like to note that we have an application for a PAD, a planned area development. It's like the overlay zone. I'm sure you're familiar with it, that would go on the property. There's a mixed-use proposal, a number of mixed uses with that residential, potential commercial, retail, and as you know, there's a gasoline station being proposed with a convenience store. So it's a mixed-use proposal that's being made. We also have two text amendments. One concerns a modification to the distance requirement between a gasoline service station and a number of different uses, including a church use and a public school, for example. And that text amendment essentially provides the Zoning Commission with the ability to reduce or eliminate that requirement as so long as the proposed use will not have an adverse impact on the public health safety. There is another text amendment that concerns the driveway widths for such a use. What's currently in your zoning regulations today, Mr. Hesketh from day one told me just doesn't work. It doesn't accommodate turning radii. So we have proposed to increase those provisions, and that is, once again, that's the second text amendment that is before you this evening for comment. The real issue, I think, concerns the PAD, and that's the planned area development. And with the permission of the chair, I was just going to refer to a couple sections in the POCD, and I don't think everybody has a copy. I have excerpts to the sections that I'm only going to refer to. It's all public information, so it's nothing new that's going in, as Mr. Peck indicated, and I know this isn't a public hearing, but I just, as a courtesy to the commission, if you want, I can just hand out copies of the few pages that I'm going to refer to in the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just a couple of sections there.
Thank you.
And as you're probably aware, one of the purposes of the PAD is to provide flexibility to your zoning commission relative to uses going forward in time. And in particular, it makes reference to, and this is right out of your zoning regulations, mixed uses, adaptive reuses of existing buildings. And one of the things that Mr. Evans is really trying to do here is to preserve the old, what's referred to as the pool barn structure, as opposed to raising it and then having a vacant site upon which he could build something. So in that building is proposed the various mixed uses that I made reference to before, the office, potential office retail, and 4 residential dwellings that'll have, they'll be townhouse format, so they could have workspace on the first floor and living space on the second. But referring to your POCD, 2000 POCD, if you turn, I would respectfully refer you to 3 pages in, it's page 77, making reference to this area of town. And it makes reference to that, how this is an important gateway. It's linear with a mixture of businesses along Route 10, Hot Meadow, and with access to the river and the Farmington Valley Bikeway, which is immediately adjacent to the subject property. And this proposal will provide access to that. We have been approached, Mr. Evans has been approached by individuals associated with the trail, and they have asked that if indeed this were to be approved, that the Cumberland Farms convenience component would have bike accessory uses as a biker, having, a tire repair kit and those types of things available. The public restrooms are there. And they've asked Mr. Evans to consider providing a shelter of some sort for bikers or bicyclists, as opposed to bikers with motorcycles, where they could stop in bad weather events and things like that. So that's something that he would be more than willing to include, and if this commission were to provide a favorable recommendation back to the zoning commission, we would have no objection to you recommending to the zoning commission that they consider those types of things as potential conditions if indeed the zoning commission were to approve the underlying proposal. But what I would like to point out here underneath policy 1 at page 77 in your POCD is the objective that's stated as, quote, encourage the zoning commission to create a new zoning district. And we to go, is that how it's pronounced? Weetagog, okay. Tom was helping me with that. I live down in Haddam now, and there's quite a number of Indian names there, too, ranging from Higginham to all throughout the town, that will permit mixed-use development and redevelopment, but which is also included in specific form-based design criteria the village retains as historic characteristics and economic vitality is enhanced. Once again, mixed-use development and redevelopment, that's what is being proposed, is to retain and use and have an adaptive reuse of the existing pool barn and to redevelop the site, which is, historically, it was an old manufacturing site. It's in you have to remember, it's in an industrial 1 zone district right now. Manufacturing assembly is permitted on the site within this zone district. Historically, there was a machine shop in there. There was a automobile dealership, and also they manufactured and assembled guns there. So, there's an old manufacturing use there, and just to the north of us is an old machine shop that used to service the aerospace industry. So so it would be a reuse, once again, adaptive reuse of the property consistent with your POCD. If you turn to the next page, or I'm sorry, a couple pages further, you have Hot Meadow Street, page 81 in your POCD. And it states in the top of the second paragraph there at page 81, some of these buildings may not be well adapted to current or future manufacturing processes, and it is possible that the existing buildings may be reused in the future for offices and other uses. Just what's being proposed with the PAD with this application. Once again, I would respectfully suggest it's consistent with the POCD. Policy number 1, you see those magic words again, adaptive reuse plans. A little further down in the next full paragraph, second line over on the right-hand side, quote, since managing land use change in this area will require consideration of the factors unique to each site on a case-by-case basis, the purpose of the PAD process, an overall mixed-use district for this area is not recommended. In other words, people should come in with a site-by-site proposal utilizing the overlay zone process, which is exactly what's occurring here. And once again, if you turn to the top of the next page, page 82, policy number 2, and this is for Hot Meadow, exactly where we are, encourage the zoning commission to consider overlay zoning or other techniques. And that's what's being proposed with this application with the PAD. And then a little further down, create a comprehensive plan, policy number 3, quote, create a comprehensive plan to address access management, thank you. We'll have to add that M in there. And pedestrian mobility in the corridor, and to tie into the Farmington Valley Greenway. Again, the trailway is immediately adjacent to the property on the westerly side. We have immediate access to it, and this proposal will incorporate that trail and provide the additional access that currently isn't there today. And if you turn to the last page in the handout, it's page 166. Mr. Peck, your planner, made reference to the housing and the housing goals. If you look down in the white box, number 3, it says encourage the availability of a range of housing types and densities. We're proposing, Mr. Evans is proposing, 4 residential units within the pool barn that would have essentially 800 square feet on the first floor and 800 square feet on the second, would be 1,600 square feet. They would be market rate units, and that would certainly be something other than single-family housing, which is the predominant housing type and stock here in the town of Simsbury. So I would respectfully suggest, for that reason, this proposal is also consistent with the POCD. In addition to what your town planner has pointed out, I would again suggest that these provisions that we just walked through are consistent. I do have a handout, this excerpt from the Simsbury Route 10 corridor study that I could give you as well, or I can just cite to the pages and where it makes reference to different items. It's totally up to you, Mr. Chairman. Pardon me?
Just the item.
Okay. And just referring to page Roman numeral 3, it makes reference to bike facilities, and it says there's a bullet, quote, "Bike facilities in town along the Route 10 corridor are superb, and a culture for biking can be an asset to the community." Once again, we're right next to the trail. I know in my town, we're desperately trying to get a rails to trail. There's an old line that runs along the Connecticut River on the westerly side, and we're desperately trying to work with the railroad that DEP actually owns, but for some reason is leasing it to a private company that thinks that the railroad may come back. So that's not happening all that quickly. But you have a wonderful asset right here in the town, and this will be incorporating that into the plan. And then just a few pages later, what's designated as page Roman numeral 6 makes reference to bicycle transportation being enhanced along Route 10. And then in that paragraph, it provides, quote, "The study also recommends other measures for creating a robust bicycle network, including installing improved access points," which is being provided here, to the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail, and installing bicycle parking facilities. And you'll have, once again, Mr. Evans is willing to provide a shelter, whether it's a gazebo or whatnot, on the property to accommodate bicyclists during, if they just want to take a break, get out of the sun or whatever, on the property. So in addition to the provisions referenced by Mr. Peck in his report, I would respectfully suggest to this commission that those provisions that have been referred to in your 2007 Plan of Conservation and Development, as well as the Route 10 corridor study, that this proposal, both for the PAD and for the text amendments, are consistent with those documents. And once again, that's what the purpose of this referral is to this commission. And I would respectfully request that you make a finding consistent with that, and if you would like to have any conditions or recommendations to the zoning commission, again, we would have no objection to the items that I referenced concerning the biking. As to the text amendments, once again, there is a change that would provide, a proposed change, that would provide the zoning commission with the ability to reduce or eliminate the existing 400-foot distance requirement. 3 of your gas stations in town currently, one is across the street, 2 are across the street from churches, one a Methodist church, the other one I believe St. Mary's, a Catholic church, and another one is within 400 feet of Montecero School. So you have existing conditions in town where that has not created, obviously, a public safety issue. But I included that language in the proposed zone text amendment, that they have the ability to reduce that distance, but upon a finding that the proposed use will not have an adverse effect on the public health and safety. And the reason we have it for this site is that there is a synagogue within the 400 feet, and we have obtained a letter from the rabbi indicating that at this time he has no objection to this proposal, and I believe that has been part of the record that was forwarded to the Planning Commission. And again, the other text amendment is really minor. It just deals with driveway widths, and it's more of an engineering issue, just providing that they can be wider than what's provided for now in the regulations. And actually, that's for efficiency, and that's a safety issue to make it wider so that vehicles turning in would be able to make those turns. So thank you for the time. I don't want to, if you have any questions on the specific proposal, we're more than happy to respond to them, but technically what's before you this evening is the overall concepts. You're wearing your planner's hats tonight. It's not a subdivision, it's a planning referral, and you're acting essentially as planners and providing your recommendations back to the zoning commission that they will take presumably into consideration during the public hearing process, which is our next step. Thank you very much. Unless you have any questions.
Yeah,
for me.
a couple questions,
Yes, sir.
maybe. You've cited several sections of the POCD where you feel the application is in compliance or at least supports the POCD. Can you think of any elements of the application that are not consistent with the POCD?
Not really. The POCD, as you know, I've sat on boards and commissions. It's really a wish list going forward, and then possibly goals or policies on how to achieve that. And, this proposal is consistent, with the POCD. There really isn't anything, you have a specific section dealing with this area of town. You call for adaptive reuses, and I have to suspect that it's in part due to the fact that you have these old manufacturing uses that occurred in that area of Route 10. and you call for mixed uses so that you have some variety, which is consistent with what you have on that linear track of Route 10. You have that mix with some commercial, some retail, and residential, and that's what's being proposed. But, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised to find so many consistencies with your POCD and the proposal. But go ahead.
Yeah, one of the references that you cited, which was on page 81, deals with a specific part of town that is not the location of the application. So I'm not sure you really, maybe you want to say that the spirit of the words applies, but it's not the exact location. This deals primarily with the
Simsbury Center.
Yeah, okay, down to the northern part of Weetag, I would say.
Right.
So let's be careful when you cite that as supporting evidence. Also, the Southern Gateway, as Hiram, Mr. Peck explained, really deals with more or less the 60 acres that was under discussion at the time when the POCD was being developed in 2007. Just want to make sure that everyone understands those facts.
And along those lines, just if you go back to page 77 and 81, and then if you look at Terriffill and at page 76, a lot of these areas in town, in your plan that you helped to adopt, you do make reference to having these mixed-use, adaptive reuse proposals, and that's certainly, you know, in 2007 was the trend in planning, and it certainly hasn't changed, and I don't think it's going to change anytime in the future. So, Mr. Rice, you are right that there's some of those distinctions, but the general theme running with you know, from pages 76, for example, through 81 and 82 or 3, you do have that, but you are correct with the specific sites.
As far as access to the bike path, where's the property line of this
That's a good question.
of this piece of land right now? The rear property line, and would someone on the bike walking path, would they have to cross someone else's property?
Mr. Hesketh can respond to that.
Good evening. For the record, Guy Hesketh, licensed professional engineer with F.A. Hesketh and Associates, and I do have here.
It's just put this. I can do that.
I've got a rendering of the site which shows what's being proposed. And if I can just start out here real quickly. This is the location of the site in relative to Hot Meadow Street. The Hartford's located here, and then this is the existing barn building that's still there. So this is the pool barn building. That's where our site is located. Close up of that. Well, I can show you a little bit here. The property lines actually abut the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail, which is located here. So the entire north is in this direction. The entire western property line abuts the right-of-way, which is a DOT property.
Okay.
Showing you a little bit closer on this, there is existing. This is a representative of the paved area here. This between the two lines here. There is a water course which picks up runoff from the state highway and runs in a kind of a north fashion along here. And there's an existing culvert that's that provides a walking bridge or something. I think that was probably part of when it was an industrial application, allowed access to the railroad spur. It's a concrete culvert with a bridge structure over the small bridge structure. We're proposing to utilize that existing culvert and have a pathway that would run from the trail itself and then provide access into the parking lot. The property line would be this line located right here. So the access would be directly from our property to the right-of-way and to the Heritage Trail. So there would be no private property involved in that.
And that was part of our wetlands application that we received approval for.
Would it, regarding the text amendments to the zoning regulations, would it have been possible to apply for variances?
You could, but they're relative to, there really isn't any need to. We were going to planning and zoning for the PAD. The PAD, as you know, is essentially an overlay and I'm going to use the word replaces, the underlying zone. So it seemed to make sense to just deal with everything within one context, with one commission, and have the relief that way.
Text amendment doesn't require a public hearing, or
Oh, it does.
it does?
Oh, yes. That'll be part of the hearing starting presumably on July 7th, would be a hearing on those three applications. One would be the zone change, the PAD, and then the other would be for the two text amendments. Oh, no, that's subject to a public hearing by statute.
Any other questions?
Just one, I noticed that there was a reply for a referral from the Capital Region Planning, CROG, CROG.
Oh, I know, Croc, yeah.
And typically that's if the property abuts other towns. I don't think there's any abutting properties to Avon, or it's cited Avon, Bloomfield, Canton.
Yeah, I can ask that too. I talked with CROG about that, Phil, and basically they said that, well, this particular application doesn't require it because of the proximity of the property. I just said, well, would you review it anyway, see if you have any issues or comments or complaints, concerns, whatever. So that's why they did it. It wasn't because it was required.
Okay.
I also get a little anal, and I send it to everybody when I have an application, because it's a text amendment and arguably could apply throughout the town.
So did they actually, I don't remember what their response was, did they say it's consistent with the regional plan of development, or did they say they have no jurisdiction over it?
I can tell you exactly what they said. Quote, today, June 10th, 2014, CROG received your emailed referral of the proposed change to the zoning regulations pertaining to commercial garages and service stations. Copies of the application were also delivered to us by certified mail, posted on June 6th, 2014, and by hand on June 9th, 2014, by the applicant's representative. We do not need additional paper copies. We will review the materials submitted and contact you if we need any additional information or have any questions. So they may or may...
They're in receipt of the request.
That's correct.
They haven't made a response.
That's correct. If they have anything prior to the public hearing, they'll need to let us know, and that'll be read into the record of the public hearing should they respond, Bill.
And that goes to the zoning commission once they do respond.
Anything else? Rich, do we have any questions? Do you have any questions?
I just have a question. What's the alternative to these text amendments? So if these text amendments were not here, would they have to go for a variance to the zoning commission in order to get this passed through? What's the process?
As Attorney Smith said, they could apply for a variance for those things. There are a number of different ways to get to the result that the applicant is looking for, and applying for a variance is certainly one way to do that. In this case, we've supplied in our regulations a number of different tools, and we're hoping that the applicants, no matter whether you like the application or don't, will select the tool that is the cleanest and sort of the best in the long term. The applicant in this case chose the PAD regulation and chose to make these changes to the regulations because they thought, I believe, it was probably the cleanest way to do it. It does, in this case, only apply to situations where these particular distance requirements would take effect, or whether the driveway openings would take effect. So it would only apply to this property in this case. That change in the regulation could be applied to some other property if it had to do with the distance between a service station and a house of worship. So it could be done that way as well. It's a matter of choice, I believe. I don't know that there was much more to it than that, frankly. We'd like to see, variances are, in my opinion, are often misused. You have to obviously provide proof of a hardship to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I don't know if any of you have sat on ZBAs before or not, but sometimes ZBAs grant variances when, in my opinion, they shouldn't be granted. Sometimes they don't grant them when, in my opinion, they should. But by and large, they do the best they can with the information that they have. So I think variances are kind of an extraordinary means, and they ought to be only used whenever there's no other result or access to the solution possible. That's my opinion.
Yes.
Chris Smith, for the record, again, I just would like to point out that the variance doesn't You don't request a variance request or relief from the zoning commission. That would go to the zoning board of appeals.
Right.
So in this case, we kept everything with the zoning commission, it's their regulations. And instead of going to another body and asking them to override the zoning regulations, it was, well, let's go to the zoning and then have it so it would be total discretion if the commission in the future with an application, with our application, with any other application, if they wanted to approve a reduction, it would be within their discretion to do that, but the applicant would have to demonstrate no adverse impact to the public safety. So that's why I drafted it that way, just so that the zoning commission, who basically creates the zoning regulations and governs and monitors them, would be the people making the decision as opposed to the ZBA.
I have a question for the applicant in reference to the existing building. Now, a PAD is supposed to be a mixed use, as it were, for the piece of property. And could you give us a little input on what the existing building is going to be used for and what your plans are for it? I understand you are thinking about putting a couple apartments in it. I can see that on your plan, but I'm interested in the rest of the space because when we rule on a PAD application, it has to be in harmony with all the components. And so I'd like a little bit more input on the existing building.
The site,
Guy, perhaps, we have the actual floor plans, Mr. Chairman, that Mr. Hesketh can just indicate, we can just show that to you right away. Maybe the architectural on the front, Dale Cutler had prepared that for us there, just, what the elevations look like on the southerly side of the
So we basically have, what, 4 townhouses?
Right, and then maybe flip, Guy, where you were going before with the floor plan and just walk the commission through that, would probably be the
Again,
best.
for the record, Guy Hesketh, what we're looking at is like a little bit more than the first half of the building that's closest to Hop Middle Street would be utilized as a retail space. This is the first floor plan. And then these 4 units would be located on the back portion of the project, the back portion of the existing building. They would have access, again, from the sidewalk, a set of stairs that would come up to the first floor. We anticipate that would either be for living space or it could be some type of mixed use.
2 office space and...
Office and/or
In-home, in-home.
home
use.
occupancy, that type of thing. And then the living quarters would be upstairs on that. So there would be 4 units that would be located side by side with access, again, from the sidewalk. And then there could also be interconnected with that as a deck that would allow wheelchair access to the
Will the apartment space always be part of this project? Or is that predicated on who may come in and rent? I mean, are they going to be built right away? Or are they going to be, possibly become office space as compared to apartment space?
No, Tom, for Mr. Evans, we have designated, what's being proposed to the zoning commission is that those 4 units would be residential and would be approved as that. So that's what's being proposed. There wouldn't be any option. I presume if you wanted to convert that over to something other than residential, you'd have to go back to the zoning commission and do a public hearing all over again to amend that PAD. But this is a PAD. My understanding of the PAD, it's like most overlays in Connecticut, it applies to the property, and that's what's approved, is what's being planned, what the proposal is. It's not like we're just getting a general zone change and you can just haphazardly move things around. It's like, this is what's being applied for, and if there were to be a change, I presume the applicant, or the owner, Mr. Evans, would have to come back and have a public hearing and go through this process all over again to amend it. Is that, Mr. Peck, that's my understanding how it works.
That's correct, yes.
And that's how it works in most towns.
So you would be locked into a residential component there?
Well, this construction doesn't seem to take into account any of the human activity that normally takes place around someone's home, whether it's a townhouse or anything else. It seems to me that the back of that butts up to the property line, is that correct?
Yes.
So, normal people, they have grills, they have bikes, they need to put things in different places. How is that proposed to work out here? Because it doesn't look like there's room for anything more than walking through the door and living there.
I have 2 kids live down in the city, down in New York, and they don't have any storage space, and they and everybody I know down there, that's how they survive.
Okay.
It's 1,600 square feet. I mean, that's not over the top, but I had 2 sons in a condo at 1,800 square feet, 3 bedrooms, and there was plenty of area. And what's really nice here is that you do have the the bike path right nearby. I mean, it's really, I'm going to call them 4 apartments, but that's what they are. They're 4 dwellings that'll be located there. And obviously, you don't have the yard space and whatnot that you would have in a large condominium development. But, you know, in looking at your PAD regulations and how it's site-specific for these different properties, you know, along the Route 10 corridor, you know, it certainly seems consistent with the purpose of with the PAD. But you're right, I mean, there aren't garages, there aren't sheds, there won't be room for that. It does abut up to the back of the other property. And once again, Mr. Evans has come in with this specific proposal to utilize the pool barn because he's received quite a bit of input from people, and he did an informal with zoning commission, I guess, a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, and people were, you know, indicating that the idea was to try to save, I'll use that word, the pool barn as opposed to just raising it and then having the empty lot to use. But that is a good point, but, you know, I would, I don't know, I've done a lot of these types of, you know, proposals throughout the state, and this is, I don't see that as a real issue. If it was a very small residential apartment, maybe, but it's, you know, you're talking about a townhouse at 1,600 square feet at the lower level too.
And I wouldn't comment much on it, except that there is no deck on the back like you would typically see in condos. There is no area to put your car except virtually in front of those units. There's nowhere for any other human activity. You've got to really go to do anything. And that concerns me because you're going to have people coming and going. At the same time, you've got cars coming in and out for gasoline. And, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it's, you know, once again, it's a mixed-use proposal, and you know, it wouldn't be marketable if it's not going to work. So, and Mr. Evans is pretty confident that this will work, and this is very similar to, I just got something down in South Norwalk, almost 300 units, and you know, these types of uses and these mixed uses are not uncommon. And I'm not saying this is South Norwalk, for example, but in a mini micro scale, I mean, that's usable area and it's usable space, and that's some diversified housing. It won't necessarily be for, you know, it could be for, you know, younger people, it could starter homes type of thing, or for older people that are scaling down and they want to have something in the Simsbury market to be close to their grandchildren, or whatever the case may be. Or people that have home occupation, they're younger and they want to have their home occupation from where they live. So that's really what's being proposed here. It's not so much a condo in a condominium complex where you might have community facilities such as a pool and a community house and some things along those lines. I think, you know, Gillette Ridge, for example, you know, it's not meant to be that. It's just provide some diversity in the housing. And once again, I think it's page 166 in your POCD that makes reference to housing and providing some diverse opportunities within the mixed-use communities, and that's what's being proposed here. It's not your standard single-family home, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, it's a good point.
We have egresses to the back of the property? There must be 2 egresses to these apartments.
For the building code.
On the plans.
There should be by code.
Mr. Cutler, we didn't bring him this evening. He's the architect who designed it, and it was our understanding we weren't going to get into these real specifics that would be more for zoning. But I can't attest to, there would have to be, everything would have to comply with building and with the and ADA and everything else, and from my understanding, he has designed everything to do that. I can't answer that because I'm...
Well, I can see here on one of the apartments, it looks like you have a small staircase deck with an egress to the back of the property. And from the property lines, it shows that that's a possibility.
You're right on these. That shows example, the second one, and these would be the first floors. There's the front and then the back.
It shows nothing on the elevations, but that would become unless that's Cumberland Farms. Hold on. It's okay. It is Cumberland Farms. We don't have any elevations to the back here other than these floor plans.
I've got a note on one of the documents, 5-LA-1. that PDF shows at the back of this property towards the backside of those buildings, that there's a reconstructed gravel access drive to basement overhead doors. I don't know if that's gonna remain there or be taken out, so it looks like there's some access in the backside.
I think it's essentially a walkout basement. So the first floor would be above grade, but
Gotcha.
Tom, isn't that, because I've been down there with you, I mean, there's the walkouts there,
Well,
but
the
the,
existing,
Correct.
building. Or grandfathered in, whatever it might be.
I think we should probably leave that to
Zoning?
zoning and the architect.
Well,
But it's a valid question.
we're trying to make sense of the appropriateness of the apartments in this PAD, and if they fulfill our expectations of what a PAD should be. Any other questions?
thank you.
Hiram, are we looking for a motion to refer?
The applicant has requested that. The zoning commission hearing is scheduled for July 7th, when the public is more than welcome to come and make comments as well. If the commission is ready to do that, that certainly would be appropriate.
In that case, we should make a referral of in one form or another, only so that they have it, and if we don't, it then goes as a positive referral?
That's correct.
I see.
That's correct.
Any of the commissioners prepared to make a proposal or a recommendation?
I'll move that we provide a positive referral for zoning application 14-31 for a site plan amendment and zone change from I-1 to PAD on the property located at 155 Hot Meadow Street, map F17, block 201, lot 002A. I'd like to cite the applicant's explanation of adherence to the 2007 POCD. I believe that you pointed out salient points, and would also like the referral to consider adding the conditions of adding some type of shelter for bicyclists or pedestrians that are on the bike path.
Do I hear a second for the motion?
I'll second.
We have a second. Discussion. Rich, any concerns?
I don't think this is what the PAD really considered when it was implemented.
Mm-hmm.
It just totally does not make sense to me the way this is being done. If you want to have a gas station, have a gas station, but to put living quarters in the middle of all of that, that doesn't make sense. There's a lot of liability there. A lot of people can get hurt that way. If there's a major spillage on the property, how do these people get to their homes? There's an explosion on the property, which happens sometimes, not frequently, but it happens sometimes. How are these people protected? I just don't see any of that there. I see a lot of danger that's really not accounted for here. I've looked at the other documents that we have that show, the double tanks and the collection in case there's a leak, that sort of thing. But when you have a tanker, and this has happened before, a tanker that lets loose its load in the middle of a parking lot, that's a whole different question. And that's very difficult to contain. And again, how that affects people actually living there, I don't think that's a good mix. So for that reason, I'm not supporting this.
The mixed-use aspect of the PAD is satisfied, in my opinion, with the housing and the retail, regardless of the function of the retail. So I'll be voting in favor of the motion.
Mm-hmm. Any comments?
This is just for the zone change, not the text amendment?
Correct.
Okay.
I support it.
I also have concerns about this application. Once again, the PAD was to give most of the board's options for the industrial property that exists in town, and that if it seems to fit, we would judge it on its merits. And for the same reason Rich brought up, I don't see apartments combined with a gas station as what we envisioned in our PA, our plan of development for the future and for this general part of town. If there was a way that a gas station could go in there by themselves without trying to cover all your bases with retail space and residential component, it might fit with our plans to invigorate that area with a little bit more of a commercial component. But I just don't see that the apartment and filling station there work well together. So I'll probably be voting in the negative as well. Other than that, we should have a vote, and I think we've all expressed it, but we'll do it officially. All in favor of the proposal, say aye.
Aye.
All in rejecting it? Aye. We have a split vote at 2-2, which I believe moves the referral in a positive direction. Is that not true? On the second matter of the site plan amendment from a Zone 1 to PID, we just did that, and the text amendment changes. Any comments there?
The other gas stations that are near places of worship,
Mhm.
or within 400 feet of the other conditions as well. I haven't been in town long enough. Those places were all here before I came. So were there variances given to those businesses, or did one exist before the other and that wasn't needed?
All those were grandfathered in. They were not in place when these regulations were incorporated into our plan. So almost all of those sites were already pre-existing, and there were no regulations overseeing the regulation as it is now. Once again, those stipulations were no doubt put in to guard against public safety. So it should be considered when you're making your decisions as far as text change.
Can I ask Hiram a question?
Absolutely.
Hiram, has this question ever come up before us before? Have we ever?
Question hasn't come up here since I've been here. A couple things I could offer. The applicant did talk about some of the stations that exist, service stations that exist in close proximity to them. I think that's correct. I think Mark is correct in terms of when they existed, and then the regulations came in to say, well, maybe this isn't such a good idea. I would point out too that the applicant did put up in the text amendment that the zoning commission would have to find that there was no safety issue in order to approve that. So there's some acknowledgement of the fact that it's a safety concern that the zoning commission would have to find appropriate if it were to move forward. So it's in both directions there.
Are any of the commissioners prepared to make a motion on these text changes?
The other one I can simply tell you, might as well just comment too, I've got the other one. The other one I can tell you that should this go forward, the DOT, because it is a state highway, is going to make whatever determination it needs to make with regard to radii and curb cuts, no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is an acknowledgement of the fact that the regulation is there. The zoning commission would get to look at it as part of the site plan process, but just to be clear about it, the fact is, it's a state road. DOT is going to do what they do. Been there before.
To repeat, any commissioners willing to make a motion on this? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion that we do not change the text. The text was put in good faith for public safety, and I'd like to keep it as is. Do I hear a second on that motion?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none? Shall we have a vote? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, sorry.
You're also an aye? Unanimous? And so we're giving a negative referral to the text change. Thank you, gentlemen.
Everyone's time. Thanks.
Thanks.
You too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Back. That's me.
Yep, sorry.
That's okay.
Have you sit down.
I have one of those. In that pile that's about this deep.
Well, he said he may have to, he said he may have to leave early, so he may not be coming back.
Okay.
Just a couple quick things. Zoning Commission at their last meeting was discussing the, here he is. Can you come up? Was discussing the proposed rezoning for the Hartford property, form-based code. A couple of people said, well, they would like to keep the hearing open for further comments. So that hearing was continued until, again, the 7th of July. Last night, I presented to the Board of Selectmen essentially where that was, and there were no questions that I think that came up at the hearing that were unable to be answered. I did answer them again, and I'll give the same presentation to the Zoning Commission on the 7th. So if you're able to make that or have any interest in that, please feel free to come to that as well. So July 7th will be a busy meeting. The only other thing that I had was that we're still working on trying to finish up the Weetog Village District, and that'll be a zone change that'll come to that area once we finish up with the Hartford and finish up with the other applications. Probably going to be in September by the time I get it to you then. But just to let you know, that's still coming. It's on the works.
Any change or any update on the Big Y situation?
I have no new information for you. Actually, one of the attorneys the engineers that was here this evening is the engineer for Big Y, and they've indicated they're working on a drainage issue right now, trying to get that resolved. I don't have any indication that there's nothing to keep them from applying for the building permit right now. So as far as I'm concerned,
Agreement was made with the International Skating Center?
see, I don't know that that's been signed yet. I've seen it. The town attorney was involved in that. The discussion with the town attorney was involved in that. My understanding was that all the issues were worked out. I haven't seen a signed document. But as far as we're concerned, they could come in and apply for their building permit tomorrow, and they would be able to go forward. So we're just waiting for that to happen. We do think, though, they only build a certain number of new facilities a year. So we're anxious to have them come forward, obviously, because if they don't get going by, I'd say, August or so, they're probably, going to put it off an additional year. They need to be open by.
As I recall, they made mention of the fact that they like to start in February and March to get themselves online for the holiday season. And since that isn't going to happen, they're going to have to make those carrying costs right on through for another 12 months or, another 9 months further than they would like. So I'm just wondering if there's been any other further communication with you as far as their
I've talked to Matt Demore just briefly, and he indicated to me that they do need to go forward soon because they're doing their fund allocation for their next store and very shortly. So as I said, something probably needs to happen in July or August, and we should know by then.
Now, do they have to come in front of any of the boards?
They're done.
They are already pre-approved,
Yes.
basically, because they fulfill the the zoning requirements in that area?
Yes, yes, they have their site plan approval, they have their DOT approval. They're all ready to go.
I see.
Yep. That's all.
Hiram, do you know the location of that July 7th zoning commission meeting?
Probably going to be right here. So, if it's different than that, I'll let you know, certainly. We could probably try to get the library, although it's really hard to get meeting space, so it may well be here, but if it's not, I'll let everybody know ahead of time, as soon as I can. It may well be.
Maybe a busy one.
I'm
I don't know, it wasn't that busy last time, you know? It was a public hearing last week, and I think there were fewer members of the public there than people supporting the whole effort, you
Yeah.
know, the professionals.
But it's not the only thing on the agenda, so.
True.
Okay,
Any other questions?
great, thanks.
None. Let's go to the approval of minutes. Now, since I wasn't here, Hiram, how many members do we have to have for the approval of minutes? Since I wasn't here and I'm going to have to abstain. Were all these, were all,
Yeah, Alan was
All the
here,
members here?
Richard was here, I was here, and Ron.
all right, so we can move forward.
Yep.
On page one of the June 10th, 2014 Planning Commission minutes, page one, do we have any changes or?
So line 18, Mr. Kulikowski should be changed to me.
I see. Any others on page one? Page two? Hearing none, page three? Page four?
Just for accuracy, it's Leonard Skinnard, not Skinner.
I found it afterwards.
Where are you at there?
On
Line 154,
54.
and then on 155, it's actually 2 L's for Allison and 2 S's for Kraus.
So, let me modify that a little bit. Leonard is
Actually,
L-Y-N-Y-R-D,
yeah, you're right.
and Skinnard is S-K-Y-N-Y-R-D.
Yeah.
Where it's clear is that Janice did not go to the concert.
Or we grew up with it.
Well, I knew I was spelling it wrong, but I just.
Well, you got Willie right. Do we hear a motion on accepting the minutes?
So,
A second.
Second.
Approval of the minutes? Vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. One abstention? We have 4 ayes and 1 abstention. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. See you in 2 weeks.
All right.
you gotta be somewhere? You do. You do.